Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I've camped most of my life, and if there's one thing the wilderness teaches you, it's this. Night doesn't just make the woods darker, it makes them different. Sound changes, distance changes, and sometimes the world feels like it's holding its breath. My younger brother Dylan and I had set up camp near the tree line in Glacier National Park in late September. Tourist season was over. The campgrounds were nearly empty. The mountains looked sharp against the sky, and the cold had that clean metallic bite that comes just before winter claims the high country. By nightfall, the temperature dropped hard. Frost formed along the edges of our tent stakes. Our breath fogged the air as we talked, laughed, and burned through the last of our coffee before crawling into our sleeping bags. The silence out there felt enormous. No traffic, no distant voices, just wind whispering through pine needles and the occasional crack of ice shifting along the rocks. I fell asleep fast. Years of camping will do that. I woke at 2:30 a.m. Not suddenly, not with a start, but slowly, like something had reached into my sleep and pulled me upward. At first, I thought the faint humming was wind moving through the valley. Low, steady, almost electrical. Then I noticed the tent walls glowing. A soft blue light pulsed through the nylon fabric, faint but steady, like moonlight filtered through deep water. "Dylan," I whispered. "You awake?" No response. The humming grew louder. It wasn't wind. It sounded like power lines vibrating in freezing air. A tight, buzzing vibration I could feel in my teeth. I pushed myself onto one elbow and stared at the glowing tent wall. The light brightened, faded, brightened again. My heartbeat began to match its rhythm. I reached over and shook Dylan's shoulder. He groaned but didn't wake. The humming deepened, vibrating through the ground beneath us. I swallowed and slowly pulled the zipper down an inch. Cold air spilled inside. I leaned toward the opening. Between the trees, about 20 yards away, a blue light hovered. Not shining, not flickering, floating. It wasn't a flashlight beam. It wasn't fire. It had no visible source. Just a sphere of pale blue light suspended in the darkness. And it was moving, not smoothly, not drifting, advancing, stopping, advancing again, like something walking that didn't need legs. My throat went dry. I grabbed Dylan and shook him harder. "Wake up." He jerked awake just as the light drifted closer, 10 feet from the tent. Then it stopped. The humming stopped too. Everything stopped. No wind, no trees moving, no distant stream, no insects. Silence fell so completely that my ears began to ring. The blue light hovered there, motionless, as if watching us. "Waiting." Dylan whispered, "What is that?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The light pulsed once, twice, then blinked out. Darkness swallowed the woods. Total, absolute. The kind of darkness that feels thick enough to touch. A second later, something moved just beyond the tent. Heavy, deliberate. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Frost cracking beneath weight. My skin tightened. The steps circled us slowly. Measured. Patient. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Whatever was out there. It walked on 2 feet. Dylan's hand gripped my arm so hard it hurt. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us breathed. The footsteps stopped near my side of the tent, close enough that I felt pressure through the ground. A presence, waiting, then one final step, and silence. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. We didn't move. We didn't speak. We waited for dawn like prisoners, counting the last minutes of a sentence. When pale morning light finally crept through the trees, we unzipped the tent together. The cold hit first, then the stillness. The forest looked ordinary again, harmless. Sunlight touched the frost-covered ground, and that's when we saw the footprints. They circled the tent, deep impressions pressed into the frozen earth. Not boots, not animal tracks. Each print had a shape almost human, but too long, too narrow, too stretched, like something had tried to imitate a human foot and gotten it wrong. We packed in silence, hands shaking, gear shoved into bags without care. We drove out of the park without speaking. Miles passed. Mountains faded in the rearview mirror. The humming never returned. Halfway home, Dylan finally broke the silence. You saw it too, right? I nodded. We never went back. But sometimes, late at night when the world grows quiet and the air feels heavy, I hear that faint electrical hum again. Low, steady, waiting just beyond the darkness. Story 2. I've camped alone most of my adult life. Some people need noise to feel safe. Traffic, voices, televisions humming through thin apartment walls. I need the opposite. I need distance. Trees, moving water, the kind of silence that feels older than memory. Pisgah had always given me that. I knew the trails well enough to walk them in fading light. I'd crossed its creeks in spring floods and slept through summer storms that rattled the ridges like passing freight trains. Nothing there had ever frightened me. That changed near mile marker 14. I reached the creek just before sunset, the air cooling fast beneath the thick canopy. The spot was perfect. Flat ground, soft soil, steady water, and just enough distance from the trail to feel alone. I pitched my tent, hung my food, and sat on a rock listening to the creek slip over stones like quiet conversation. Everything felt normal, familiar, safe. I grabbed my gloves and headed into the trees to gather firewood before dark. I couldn't have been gone more than 10 minutes. When I came back, my backpack had moved. Not fallen, not tipped. Shifted, a few inches to the left. At first I just stared at it, trying to remember how I dropped it. I even set it back down the way I thought I'd left it, then second-guessed myself and moved it again. I told myself the ground must be uneven. Maybe it slid. Still, I checked inside. Nothing missing. Nothing disturbed. I laughed quietly at my own nerves and started a small fire. Night settled fast. In Pisgah, darkness doesn't arrive. It pours in, filling the spaces between trees until the world shrinks to the small orange circle of your fire. By 10 p.m., the forest was completely still. No wind, no owls, no distant footsteps from late hikers. Just the creek, whispering through the dark. I crawled into my tent and fell asleep quickly. Sometime around midnight, I woke. I didn't know why at first. Then I heard it, breathing, slow, heavy, close enough that I could hear the air catch slightly on each inhale. I stopped breathing to listen. The sound continued. It wasn't mine. It was coming from just outside the tent wall, near my feet. Every instinct told me not to move. My chest tightened, burning for air, but I stayed frozen, eyes open in the dark. The breathing continued for several long seconds. Then it stopped. Silence pressed against the tent. A moment later, I heard the faint metallic whisper of a zipper. Not mine. Slowly sliding. My heart slammed, so hard I felt it in my teeth. I reached for my flashlight, flicked it on, and yanked my tent zipper open in one motion. Light cut through the darkness. Nothing. Only trees. Still shadows. The creek moving as if nothing in the world had changed. I stepped out, turning the beam in a slow circle. No movement. No footprints in the soft soil. But my cooler sat open. I knew I'd latched it. Inside, the food wasn't scattered like an animal attack. Nothing torn. Nothing ripped. Items had been shifted aside, deliberately, as if someone had searched through it. Carefully, quietly. I closed it, latched it, and sat beside the fire gripping my knife until my fingers cramped. I didn't sleep again. Every snap of cooling would make my shoulders jump. Every shift of shadow looked like a figure stepping between trees. Time stopped moving. The night felt endless, thick, and aware. When the gray light of dawn finally seeped through the branches, relief hit me so hard I nearly laughed. Exhaustion followed close behind. I told myself I'd rest for a few minutes before packing up. I must have slept 20 minutes. When I woke, my feet felt cold. My boots were gone. For a moment I thought I was still dreaming. I searched the tent, the vestibule beneath my pack. Nothing. Panic rose sharp and immediate. I stepped barefoot into the cold morning mud and began searching the clearing. That's when I saw them. 10 yards away, beside the creek, placed neatly side by side, facing the water. I stood there a long time, staring. The position was wrong. Too deliberate. Too balanced. The heels pressed into the soil as if weight had rested inside them. As if someone had been sitting at the creek's edge. Where are my boots? Watching the water move past. I didn't finish packing. I shoved everything into my bag, laced the damn boots onto my feet, and left without eating, without looking back, without stopping until the trail widened and the trees began to thin. At the ranger station, I told the man behind the desk everything. He listened without interrupting. No skepticism, no polite nodding, just quiet attention. When I finished, he asked, "Did you camp near mile marker 14? My throat felt dry. I nodded. He sighed and leaned back in his chair. "You're the third person this month." I asked what he meant. He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding how much truth I could carry. Then he simply said, "Avoid camping alone in that section." That's it. I asked, "What is it out there?" He didn't answer. He just looked past me, toward the trees beyond the station windows. I haven't camped alone since, because whatever was breathing outside my tent knew I was there. It searched my food without fear. It wore my boots. And I am certain of one thing. It was not afraid of me. Story 3. Camping in the Mojave Desert feels like standing on the surface of the moon and pretending it's Earth. The land stretches forever. Sand, rock, silence. Even the air feels thin, like it doesn't belong in your lungs. At night, the sky opens up wider than it has any right to be. Stars don't just shine out there. They press down on you. I'd camped in forests before, near lakes, in the mountains. But the Mojave Desert in California is different. There's no cover. No trees whispering in the wind. No water moving. Just open land and Joshua trees that look like they're frozen mid-scream. I went alone. I always go alone. I brought minimal gear, a small tent, a folding chair, a cooler, and an old handheld radio I'd found in my garage. It still worked. Sort of. I figured I'd tune into weather updates while stargazing. Storms out there can sneak up fast. Most of the night, the radio gave me nothing but static. Soft. Hissing. Empty. I set up camp just before sunset. By midnight, the temperature had dropped hard. The desert does that. 1 minute it's warm. The next it's biting through your jacket. Around 1 a.m., I was leaning back in my chair, staring up at the Milky Way, when the radio crackled sharply in my lap. Not static. A voice. Hello. I froze. It wasn't distant. It wasn't distorted. It was my voice. Not similar. Not close. Exact. The same tone. The same slight rasp I get when my throat's dry. For a second, I honestly thought I'd spoken out loud without realizing it. I grabbed the radio slowly. My hand felt clumsy. Hello. I set into it. Static. Just that dry, endless hiss. Then, stop talking. The whisper slid through the speaker. My voice again. Quieter this time. Strained. Like I was afraid someone might overhear. A cold ripple moved through my back. I checked the channel. Emergency frequency. There shouldn't have been anyone else broadcasting. And even if there was, it wouldn't sound like me. Radios don't copy voices like that. I told myself it was interference. Signal bounce. Some weird atmospheric trick. The desert plays tricks. I forced a laugh. It sounded fake even to me. Very funny. I muttered, though there was no one there to hear it. The radio went quiet. Just static. 5 minutes passed. Long enough for my heartbeat to slow. Then it crackled again. He can hear you. I didn't breathe. The words were clearer this time. He. My stomach dropped so fast it made me dizzy. I scanned the desert around me. Nothing but darkness. The outline of Joshua trees twisted against the stars. Miles from the nearest road. No headlights. No campfires. No other tents. He who. I whispered before I could stop myself. The radio emitted a long, steady tone. Then silence. Dead silence. Not even static. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. Slow. Dragging. Gravel shifting under weight. Not wind. Not an animal's quick skitter. These were measured steps. Heavy. Deliberate. One. Pause. Another. Pause. The sound of something scraping slightly between steps. My skin prickled so hard it hurt. I didn't want to turn around. Every horror story I'd ever heard says don't turn around. But your body doesn't listen to logic when fear takes over. I turned. There was nothing. Just darkness. The desert stretched wide and empty. Silver under the starlight. No movement. No shape. No person. The footsteps had stopped. I stayed facing that direction, straining my eyes until they watered. That's when the radio clicked softly behind me. Don't turn around. The voice didn't sound like it was coming from the speaker. It sounded close. Too close. Right next to my ear. Warm breath close. I spun around so fast my chair tipped over. Nothing. The chair hit the ground. The radio rolled into the sand. Silence. But when I looked down at the ground behind where I'd been sitting, my heart nearly shut off. Footprints. Fresh. Clear. Pressed deep into the sand and gravel. They led from the darkness straight up to the back of my chair and stopped. No prints leading away, just a trail that ended inches behind where my head had been. I backed up slowly, my legs shaking. Okay, I whispered. Okay, that's not real. The desert does weird things to your head. Isolation, silence. Your mind fills the gaps. That's what I told myself as I packed up. It took less than 5 minutes. I didn't fold anything properly. I shoved everything into the trunk. I didn't look behind me again. Not once. I drove. I didn't stop driving until the sky began to lighten with sunrise. The radio sat in the passenger seat. It stayed silent the entire drive home. No static. No voice. Nothing. The next day, I threw it in the trash behind my apartment building. I didn't even hesitate. For 2 weeks, I convinced myself it had been stress, dehydration, imagination. Then it happened again. I was driving through the city. Traffic, noise, normal life. My car radio interrupted the music with a weather alert tone. That sharp, official beep. The automated voice started listing counties and warning details. And beneath it, just for a split second, I heard it, under the alert, layered beneath the broadcast. My voice, whispering, I'm still here. I nearly drove off the road. The alert ended. Music resumed. No one else reacted. Cars kept moving. People kept walking. But I know what I heard. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't interference. And sometimes, late at night, when the world goes quiet and I'm alone in my apartment, I hear faint static, not from a device, from the dark corner of the room, soft, waiting, like it's searching for the right frequency again. And I've stopped talking to myself when I'm alone, because I don't know who else might answer.